we finished up last weekend's episode as the rebels were advancing, and we all saw what was happening, which was a very rapid advance. But then I think my last question for you last weekend was, do you expect, out of all of this activity, do you expect Assad to be toppled? And you said yes. But did you expect it to happen in the span of a few days?
No, not at all. I thought he had, at least a couple more days beyond that. It all happened so fast. I think one of the comparisons I've been drawing over the last couple of days is for those of us who watched the collapse of the U.S. mission in Afghanistan. It was very reminiscent of that, except even faster, which was, I think, very surprising for a lot of us who have watched this conflict for many years. And, we haven't seen the front lines move at all in 4 or 5 years.
Why the speed of the regime's fall? I mean, what was it that led to? Look, he battled them almost into submission back in 2015, 2016. Obviously, largely with the Russians' help. But what was the major contributor to his downfall this time?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure on specifics, although it was very evident just based on what we were seeing that there was a bunch of institutional rot and demoralization within the Syrian Arab army. I mean, if you watched what was happening and how these forces were just collapsing, it was very clear that there was something very wrong with these forces. We saw, for example, I think it was right before I came on your program last weekend, the rebels had advanced to this large bridge over a major river. And instead of blowing the bridge, the Syrian Arab army kept retreating and had an aircraft bomb the bridge, which is not very practical. It usually doesn't work to actually destroy a bridge. And so that was a big indicator for me that, something is badly wrong within these military formations, and they're collapsing very rapidly.
And to what degree was it a factor, the lack of support from either the Russians or the Iranians?
I think that was a factor, but I think if the Syrian Arab army hadn't collapsed as quickly as it did, the Russians and the Iranians would have tried to get some resources in there to try to stem the bleeding a little bit. The reality is everything happened so fast that by the time the Iranians in particular could mobilize and deploy forces, it would have been all over anyways, even if Assad had tried to hang on for a couple more days.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Look, the Russians have two very important bases there, right? One air base, one naval base. So they had resources there. Now they don't, because they've obviously moved them out of harm's way. They're not unsure what the rebels are going to do regarding the Russian assets. But it does seem like they could have done more, even with the fact that the Syrian army wasn't performing up to snuff.
Yeah, I think that on the Russian side, they had a bunch of resource constraints related to Ukraine. Now, they did have aircraft in Syria, and those aircraft were conducting airstrikes. But again, I think, those aircraft can't hold ground. And so they needed a ground force to be able to prevent this collapse from happening. That ground force probably would have had to come from the Iranians, but the speed at which the Syrians collapsed kind of made that plan go right out the window, because the Iranians just couldn't move enough resources there in time to really do anything about the problem.
Yeah, to what degree do you know about what they did move in? I mean, were they moving in militia from Iraq? Were they moving in fighters from Hezbollah? I mean, what were they attempting to do at least?
Yeah, so we saw some Hezbollah, but mainly to secure Hezbollah objectives in Syria. And we did see some Iraqi groups reportedly moving earlier in the week to support Syrian forces around the city of Hama. I think that those forces either got blocked or stopped short of engaging in Hama. One of the things the rebels did was actually cut the roads east of Hama to prevent any reinforcements from getting towards Hama, which I thought was very smart operationally in military terms, but probably prevented these reinforcements from arriving. In terms of Hezbollah, they tried to secure a key town called Qusair, which is close to Homs, which fell I think on Friday. It all happened so fast to kind of lose track of when everything fell. But Qusair is one of the conduits through which Hezbollah would get Iranian weapons. So Hezbollah pushed 2,000 fighters across the border to secure the area. But as the regime fell apart, they just withdrew back into Lebanon.
Well, I mean, it does sound, I mean, it's clear from what you're saying that, I mean, you believe that the primary contributing factor to all of this was just the failure of the Syrian army. And that then influenced the Soviet and Iranian decisions, in part because, again, of the speed of the deadline. So to what degree do you think that Syrian army is going to be completely disbanded? I mean, is there any sense that the incoming new government is going to do essentially the same thing that happened in Iraq when we just decimated the ranks of the Iraqi army after the fall of Saddam?
Yeah, they're going to have to rebuild some sort of fighting force because the Syrian Arab Army does not exist anymore. The rebels in the south captured a lot of the tanks and that sort of equipment. I'm assuming the HTS-led rebels coming from the north also captured a lot of equipment. But I mean, I haven't even seen serious reports of large remnants of the Syrian Arab Army out anywhere, whether that's in the desert or, you know, even in the kind of Assad heartland in the far west. I've seen reports of, you know, maybe 5 or 6 guys who are saying we'll fight to the very end. But other than that, I mean, there are no real remnants of the army existing.
So not even up in sort of that northeast area where Assad is from, where he sort of had his home base.
Yeah, in the kind of northwest area, yeah, there's not even any remnants up there. And in fact, we're seeing that, you know, the rebels have control in a lot of these areas now.